Welcome back to Creepy Narratives. Tonight we delve deep into the real-life horrors of demonic possession, revisiting 3 true accounts where the spiritual realm collided violently with our own. Prepare yourself, for these are tales not of fiction, but of harrowing reality. Emma was a young journalist, keen to make a name for herself in the world of investigative reporting. When she came across a brief mention of an exorcism case in a small German town from the 1970s, her interest was piqued. The tale spoke of a young woman named Anneliese, who was said to be possessed by multiple demonic entities, eventually leading to her tragic end after months of rigorous exorcism sessions. Drawn to the story, Emma decided to visit the town and document what had transpired all those years ago. The townsfolk were reluctant to speak about it, their faces shadowed by memories they'd rather forget. However, Emma managed to contact one of the priests who had been involved in the exorcism, Father Franz. Father Franz's home was a modest one, located at the edge of the town, surrounded by tall, haunting trees whose shadows danced ominously on the walls during the evening hours. Time seemed to have forgotten this place, leaving behind only the memories of days gone by. The outside world's clamor faded away, replaced by an eerie stillness that hung heavily in the air. When Emma mentioned Anneliese's name, she noticed an immediate change in Father Franz's demeanor. His hands, gnarled with age, clenched involuntarily, and his gaze drifted to a distant place, as if recalling a nightmare that never truly left him. For a moment, Emma considered leaving the past untouched, but the journalist in her yearned to uncover the story, and she gently pressed him for more. Father Franz hesitated, his eyes weary from countless sleepless nights, met hers. Seeing her genuine intrigue and compassion, he nodded slowly, motioning for her to follow him into his study, a room filled with old religious texts, photographs, and artifacts. In the center of the room, on a worn wooden table, sat a dusty box. Its edges were frayed and it bore the signs of frequent handling. Father Franz opened it with care, revealing several old cassette tapes. With a deep breath, as if preparing himself to dive back into a traumatic past, he inserted one of the tapes into an old player. The room's atmosphere shifted palpably. Emma could feel her heart rate accelerate as the machine crackled to life. The tape started with what seemed like a prayer, a chorus of voices seeking divine protection. But soon, the voice of a young woman emerged, contrasting starkly against the somber tones of the earlier chants. Anneliese's voice began softly, almost hesitantly, but as the recording continued, her tone changed. Disturbing guttural sounds, impossible to originate from a human, echoed in the room. Emma flinched as she heard screams, the utterances of religious verses, and chilling laughter that seemed to mock the very heavens. Father Franz paused the tape intermittently to provide context. He spoke of Anneliese's inexplicable behaviors, the superhuman strength she displayed, often requiring multiple men to hold her down. He described chilling moments when her eyes, devoid of emotion and humanity, would roll back, leaving only a haunting white. She'd speak in tongues, Father Franz continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Languages she had no way of knowing, Latin, Aramaic, and others we couldn't even identify. It was as if multiple entities took turns controlling her, each with its voice and mannerisms. Emma was gripped with an unease she'd never felt before. Each word from the tapes, every description from Father Franz, made the room's atmosphere grow more oppressive, almost suffocating. The dim light seemed to retreat into the corners, and she could swear the temperature dropped several degrees. It wasn't just the audio that disturbed her, it was the tangible feeling that the room itself remembered those exorcism sessions, absorbing the agony, the desperation, and the hope for salvation. The walls, silent witnesses to those harrowing days, seemed to reverberate with Anneliese's anguish, amplifying Emma's growing dread. The static hum from the paused tape filled the room briefly before Father Franz broke the silence. He looked aged beyond his years, the weight of his memories evident in the lines of his face. Every session drained us mentally, physically, spiritually, he began, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. We confronted darkness like never before, Anneliese, bless her soul, bore the brunt of it. He gestured to the old player. As we neared the final sessions, something changed. It wasn't just about the demons or the struggle anymore. There was a clarity, a purpose that emerged from within her. Pressing play, the tape resumed. Amid the earlier chaos, Anneliese's voice now came through, fragile, almost like a distant echo. Yet, there was a determination underlying her words. She spoke of a vision, an ethereal encounter with the Virgin Mary bathed in light. The Holy Mother's message was both an offer of solace and a plea. Anneliese was presented with a decision to be freed from her torment and ascend or remain ensnared, enduring further anguish but serving a greater purpose. Father Franz's voice trembled. She believed that through her suffering she could become a beacon, guiding others, especially the misguided youth, back to faith, a living testament to the battle between light and dark. Emma, captivated by the story, felt a mix of admiration and sorrow. Anneliese's choice, while incomprehensible to many, showcased a profound strength of spirit and an unwavering belief in a purpose beyond oneself. Anneliese's tragic end came mere days later, casting a pall over the entire town. Her tale would resonate, leaving an indelible mark on history and stirring conversations worldwide. Emma, carrying the weight of the recordings, departed from the town, her heart burdened yet determined. She resolved to present Anneliese's story to the world, not merely as a chilling account, but as a reflection on unwavering faith, the astounding tenacity of the human spirit, and the ever-complex interplay of belief, medicine, and the realms beyond our understanding. Julia, an investigative journalist, had always been drawn to untold tales, particularly those steeped in the arcane and mystical. When she stumbled upon the obscure account of a boy named Roland, her intrigue was instantly piqued. The events unfurled in the 1940s, in a quiet neighborhood of St. Louis, Missouri. In one unassuming household, a chilling story began to take shape that would leave an indelible mark on the annals of supernatural history. Roland, a boy of just 13, with jet-black hair and bright blue eyes, was known to be cheerful and quite ordinary by all accounts. However, his life took a grim turn after the sudden demise of his cherished aunt, who had introduced him to the world of Ouija boards. Within days, the atmosphere in the house shifted. It began with faint, inexplicable noises in the dead of night, soft whispers, and what sounded like muffled sobs from empty rooms. However, things took a more terrifying turn when household objects began to move on their own. Books would fly off shelves, dishes would shatter without being touched, and chairs would skid across rooms, leaving the family petrified. But the most alarming change was in Roland himself. His once bright eyes often rolled back to reveal just the whites. He'd be found speaking in deep, guttural voices, chanting languages he had no way of knowing. More than once, family members recounted with horror. They had witnessed Roland levitating, hovering a few inches off his bed, his body rigid and face contorted in agony. Desperate, his family consulted a slew of doctors, hoping for a medical explanation. They were shuffled from one puzzled psychiatrist to another. Tests after tests were done, and yet no one had answers. The family's desperation grew, their once happy home now a prison of terror. On one particularly harrowing night, Roland's mother, in a fit of desperation, sprinkled holy water on him, hoping it would bring some solace. To her horror, the boy screamed as if scalded, his skin blistering upon contact. It was this terrifying reaction that convinced the family they were dealing with something beyond the realm of the known. They needed divine intervention. Julia's pursuit of this macabre tale led her to an old, dusty diary that belonged to Father Bishop, one of the priests called upon to help Roland. Through the faded pages of this diary, she learned about the relentless battle that ensued in a bid to save the boy's soul. Every detail of Roland's possession was recorded with painstaking precision. The diary spoke of nights when Roland's voice would shift between that of an old woman to a growling beast. Deep, unexplainable scratch marks would appear on his body, spelling out words and forming symbols that none could decipher. On certain nights, The room's temperature would plummet inexplicably, and a foul stench would fill the air, leaving all those present nauseated. But what left Julia most unsettled was an entry where Father Bishop mentioned Roland's eyes. On one particular evening, they had, according to the diary, turned jet black, mirroring the abyss. It was as if, Father Bishop wrote, the boy was looking right through to the very depths of hell. As she turned each page, a cold dread settled in Julia's heart. The diary wasn't just a record, it was a testament to a boy's terrifying ordeal and the age-old battle between good and evil. As Julia delved even deeper into the haunting tale of Roland, her search led her to the very grounds of the old hospital where the exorcism had been carried out. Nestled amidst overgrown ivy and forgotten memories stood the imposing building, its walls bearing witness to countless stories, but none as unnerving as Roland's. Tucked away in a small annex was a chapel, where Julia was scheduled to meet a figure from the past, an elderly nun named Sister Agnes, who had been but a young novice during those turbulent times. Sister Agnes was frail, with weathered skin and hands that trembled, but her eyes held a sharpness, a clarity of someone who had seen the very face of the inexplicable. With great effort, the nun began to share her memories. "Every time I entered that room," Sister Agnes began, her voice but a whisper, "an invisible weight pressed down upon me, as if trying to smother me. It was always unnaturally cold. We would light candles, but they'd flicker and die, as if an unseen breath snuffed them out." She paused, taking a deep breath, as if steeling herself for the next revelation. "And then there were the sounds, the horrifying screams and growls. They seemed to emanate from deep within him, but were entirely inhuman. It's a sound that has haunted my nights ever since." Julia watched in rapt attention as Sister Agnes's eyes glazed over, lost in the past. "But what was even more astonishing," the nun continued, "was the abrupt calm after the storm. When the exorcism was finally deemed successful, Roland simply woke up. The wild look in his eyes was gone, replaced by the innocent gaze of the young boy he once was. It was as if he had emerged from a long sleep, oblivious to the demonic tempest that had raged within him. After these intense sessions, seeking a fresh start, Roland and his family packed their belongings and moved to a place where their past wouldn't cast its long, ominous shadow over their lives. For years, the story of the boy who battled with the devil remained shrouded in mystery and relegated to hushed whispers. Julia, with her innate curiosity and determination, was now on the brink of reviving this chilling tale, ensuring that Roland's battle and the undying spirit of those who stood by him would never fade into obscurity. Her article, when published, sent ripples across the community. While some dismissed it as superstition, many couldn't ignore the weight of evidence and eyewitness accounts. The tale of Roland's exorcism served as a chilling reminder of the eternal struggle between light and darkness, belief and skepticism. In the small town of Pavia, Italy, during the late 1970s, the Rossi family lived an uneventful life. Maria and Antonio, along with their 16-year-old son Michael, were well respected in their community. Michael was known for his gentle demeanor, often helping out at the local church. In the biting winter of 1978, the Rossi household, once filled with warmth and laughter, began to experience an unsettling shift. Michael, the cheerful 16-year-old who once filled their home with joy, began displaying erratic behavior. Initially, the changes were minor, almost dismissible. Perhaps he was just growing up, the Rossis mused. Maybe it was just the rebellious phase every teenager went through. He'd forget where he placed his school books or snap at trivial matters. But the quirks soon morphed into deeply concerning incidents that sent shivers down their spines. Sleepless nights became frequent for Maria and Antonio, as they'd often be jolted awake by the haunting sounds of chants echoing through their ancient family home. Following the eerie melodies, they'd invariably find Michael in the living room, his silhouette barely visible in the dim moonlight, reciting verses in languages they couldn't recognize. His voice would alternate between a deep, rumbling tone to high-pitched wails that seemed beyond his years or even human capacity. But it was one winter night that Maria experienced the true depth of the change in her son. Awakened from her slumber, she felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. Opening her eyes, she found Michael standing by her bedside. The loving gaze she had known all his life was replaced by cold, malevolent eyes that seemed to penetrate her soul. Frozen in fear, all she could do was pray for the dawn. The family's distress reached its peak when religious artifacts in their home seemed to trigger inexplicable reactions in Michael. A once treasured crucifix, passed down through generations, now scalded his skin on contact, leaving angry red welts. Mere whispered prayers or hymns from Maria's lips, intended to bless the household, would make Michael crumple to the ground, thrashing and shrieking in apparent agony. Desperate, the Rossis sought refuge in modern medicine. They visited every reputable doctor within reach, hoping for a diagnosis, a reason, something tangible to cling to. But each visit concluded with baffled expressions and the dreaded statement, "There's nothing physically wrong with him." Feeling isolated and out of options, they turned to their faith. Father Lorenzo, the elderly local priest with kind eyes and a reassuring demeanor, had been a pillar of support for the community for decades. Upon witnessing one of Michael's episodes firsthand, his initial shock quickly turned to solemn realization. His suspicions, though hard to voice, pointed to a dark, supernatural explanation. After a particularly disturbing incident where Michael, in a voice not his own, recounted sins of villagers from centuries past, Father Lorenzo decided to intervene. He believed that Michael was not merely suffering from an ailment of the mind or body, but of the soul. With a heavy heart and the gravest of responsibilities upon his shoulders, he approached the church's higher echelons, seeking permission to perform an exorcism, hoping to free Michael from the malevolent grip that seemed to be consuming him from within. Father Lorenzo, with determination etched on his aging face, delved deeper into the archives of the church. Dusty manuscripts, some fraying at the edges, spoke of bygone eras and legends almost forgotten. Amidst these pages, he stumbled upon references to Eligos, a demon notorious in ancient scriptures for his predilection for possessing young men. This malevolent entity lured them, ensnaring their souls, dragging them into depths of despair and malevolence. The descriptions of those possessed in the past eerily mirrored Michael's condition. Tales spoke of individuals with fluctuating temperaments, sporadic recollection of dead languages, and an unnerving aversion to the holy. With every line Lorenzo read, the weight of his task became even more apparent. Knowing the strength and cunning of Eligos, Father Lorenzo decided to conduct the exorcism in the church's catacombs, where many priests before him had battled dark entities. The catacombs, with their labyrinthine passages and centuries-old relics, were believed to be a nexus of spiritual energy. On the appointed night, the catacombs echoed with anticipation. Assisted by 2 devoted monks, Father Lorenzo commenced the ritual. The damp stone walls seemed to absorb the flickering torchlight, casting an ethereal glow, but as they began their chants, a palpable change occurred. The air thickened, pressing down on them like a tangible weight. Shadows, elongated and dancing, made the torches appear as mere fireflies, struggling against a looming darkness. Michael, bound securely to an ancient stone altar, was initially still, but as the holy verses intensified, so did his reactions. He writhed, his muscles contorting unnaturally. His screams, initially full of pain, began to take on multiple tones. His own terrified voice was now juxtaposed with a deeper, malicious one that seemed to mock their efforts. Hours felt like lifetimes. The monks, sweat pouring down their faces, persisted in their chants, sometimes faltering but never ceasing. Father Lorenzo, with unwavering faith, held a sacred crucifix, said to have been blessed by a saint, against Michael's feverish forehead. What happened next defied the laws of nature. Michael's body, convulsing in uncontrollable spasms, began to rise. He levitated, his silhouette hovering against the dim torchlight, casting an eerie shadow on the catacomb walls. The very stones seemed to tremble. The chanting reached a crescendo, the power of faith and the power of darkness locked in an age-old battle. And then, silence. Michael's body, devoid of the entity that had controlled him, fell back to the altar. His chest heaved, but his eyes, when they fluttered open, were no longer the malevolent orbs they had been. They were those of a scared boy, relieved to be free. The ordeal had taken its toll on the Rossi family. The whispers of the village, the haunting memories of that winter, were too much to bear. Seeking a fresh start and a chance to rebuild their fractured lives, they moved to a secluded village nestled in the embrace of distant mountains, where they hoped to find the tranquility they so desperately yearned for. Years later, a journalist named Claudia traveled to Pavia, having heard whispers of the exorcism. She tracked down Father Lorenzo, now retired. Over a cup of tea, he handed her a sealed envelope. "These are letters Michael wrote during his possession," he said. "I've kept them safe, believing they might offer some insight." Claudia, reading through the chaotic scribbles, felt a chill. The letters were disjointed, filled with both pleas for help and disturbing threats. The duality of Michael's tormented psyche was evident. Returning to her own town, Claudia documented the story, ensuring the bravery of the Rossi family and the unwavering faith of Father Lorenzo wouldn't be lost to time. The tale served as a reminder of the eternal battle between good and evil and the human spirit's incredible resilience. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the depths of possession and exorcism. Remember, the line between our world and the unseen is finer than we think. Stay safe, keep the faith, and we'll see you in the next haunting tale on Creepy Narratives.